talks are actually the only channel of communication because first of all, look, I mean, we've seen the Ukrainian side try to drag this thing out for as long as possible because, you know, they've been trying their best and their hardest to get NATO involved in the conflict. And the longer they drag this process out, the more they can appeal to, you know, with the same thing saying that, you know, we're being murdered and calling for Western powers to intervene, which was the initial message. You know, the latest days we've seen the social media being completely overwhelmed with messages of saying like, NATO, please close the skies over Ukraine. When in fact, you know, those same people that are putting this message forward, they obviously do not understand that in order to actually close the skies over a state, NATO would have to be directly involved in a conflict in this state. So you can't just close the skies over Ukraine, you know. So this whole, you know, mediatized campaign that is directed at one thing and one thing alone is to drag NATO into an open conflict with Russia. So you know, as to the predictions of when this will end, I'm hoping that, you know, by now it is very clear that Russia is not, you know, the NATO is not getting involved, and that Russia is willing to talk, but you'd have to want to talk for this, not just drag this whole process out as long as possible to get a third party involved. I think that you know, we've learned from the lessons you know, of the previous round of sanctions back in 2014, when Crimea requested to join the Russian Federation. They held the referendum, which was done according to the letter of the international law, but is still for some reason considered, you know, illegal in the West, because, you know, apparently there is such a thing as the right of the nation to self-identify and to self-determine, but it only works when the West wants it to, like with, for instance, Kosovo. So Kosovo can self-identify into a separate state, but Crimea cannot. You know, so basically the Russian economy has literally benefited incredibly from the first round of sanctions from 2014. We've substituted the exports immensely, and you know, if you look at the sanctions, first of all, they again have been blown out of proportion incredibly in the press, because, you know, I keep reading those headlines saying, look, all of these companies leaving Russia, they're not really leaving. If you look at the statements that they post on their websites, they're saying, look, we're pausing, you know, operation because right now, for obvious reasons, the logistics is very difficult. We have to figure out the logistics, how to bring things into Russia, and then we can resume operation. For instance, the Swedish and the Scandinavian companies, like Hennes & Mauritz, you know, one of the biggest conglomerates, like, you know, that hosts like H&M, COS, those brands, they've literally said, we're pausing until May. We can't figure out the logistics. We're just, you know, we're shutting down until May and we'll resume in May. Same with IKEA. It was all over the Western news saying IKEA is leaving Russia. No, they are not. They're saying, we will resume in May when everything has settled down and we can understand how to bring things into the country. So this in itself has been a huge pile of misinformation in the West, and not just in the West. You know, I've spoken to many Indian media, and unfortunately it seems like in India is also the same kind of feeling that everybody's leaving. But at the same time, you know, if you look at the partners that we have, you know, in the East, that's the whole of the Arab world. This is India, this is China, this is the whole of Asia, basically, you know, apart from Japan, which has been the American stronghold in the region. You know, it's a huge part of the world, not to mention Latin America and Brazil in particular. It's a huge country that has refused to join these sanctions. India has not joined the sanctions. China has not joined the sanctions. it's a big part of the world. And those economies, although, not, I mean, you would say emerging economies, but again, those are huge economies, the economies that are growing, that are evolving at a great pace. And it is a force to be reckoned with. I think that the Russian economy, first of all, I do believe that our government has prepared for this, because obviously, they did take measures. For instance, the ruble did not take a plunge as big this time around, not yet at least, as it did back in 2014. And I should know, I was actually in Paris at the time. And boy, did I feel the result of those sanctions. Boy, did I feel that, drop in the ruble. But this time around, the drop is, so far, it hasn't been as big. And we will see what comes out of these sanctions. But I do believe that any sort of reshuffle of the world economy, essentially, it would probably be a great chance for the BRICS countries to actually emerge way stronger out of this, all of the BRICS countries. I do believe that Western countries will put a lot of pressure on India, but I've been to India. I think it's first of all, it's a huge and magnificent country, and it's a strong country. So if anything, it can take the pressure of the Western countries, that's for sure. And we know that the one thing we know about Western countries, especially the US, if you look at what they've done so far, they've imposed the oil embargo, and then straight away they go for the countries that they used to bully, where they supported terrible things like Venezuela, where they supported a coup d'etat that magically, and also with cooperation from Russia, it did not succeed. In the meantime, they turn like this. They forget about all of the sanctions, about the fact that they do not consider the president a legitimate president because they used to support somebody who tried to overthrow him. And they say, oh, look, we want to buy your oil. So, the one thing that I think that, I truly believe that the Indian Prime Minister sees that the US is only acting in one country's interest, and it's their own. And they're going to be willing to throw over allies, whatever. So I do believe that Russia and India in their partnership will come out stronger on the other side of it as well, because, we value our partners. That's one thing that we have in common. It's not actually Russia who claims it. The United States Undersecretary of State, Victoria Nuland, actually confirmed this yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, at a Senate hearing on the matter. She said, yes, we do have bio laboratories in Ukraine. And she also said that they're very worried that those laboratories would fall into Russian hands. So I do believe that the bigger question is, what exactly were they developing that they're so not willing to give to, for Russia to find out? Because, we've seen and we've heard a lot of allegations that saying that, that Russia has displayed this kind of unprovoked aggression. But we're finally getting step by step those confirmations that it is not, by far not unprovoked, that there is so much stuff happening in Ukraine that even Ukrainians didn't know about.